Is it working now? All right. Let's go to the office. Hello, and welcome to the office hours after many trial and error thanks to silly YouTube problems. This is a live stream where I do stream to Twitch and YouTube at the same time, talk about Star Citizen. And no, I have not played 3.17 yet. The reason why I haven't played 3.17 yet is because it is buggy. And CIG knows it's buggy. It's been in PTU, or they released a PTU buggy because they know that they wanted to collect some data to figure out what's going on. So it is a very rough patch. If you want to know what it's like to play an ETF, play PTU right now, and you'll understand a little bit.
Hello, I like money.
And I will say this. Ooh, wrong patch. Wrong hatch. Oh, not a good idea. Oh, do not put energy drink down the wrong pipe. Ooh, that burns. You have to look up? What do you mean? Hey, Sandy. Ooh. All right. Ooh. Sorry about that. Eyes watering here for a moment. I will restate my statement that I said in the other videos before everything went bad, which is please stop posting comments in content creators like chats and comments and such about like the game's broken because we're not CIG. We don't have control over CIG at all. Contrary to popular belief, as I know, because the popular belief is that the creators are leeches and we don't do anything for the community and this, that, and the other thing that you hear in a lot of places that I don't go to anymore. But, yeah, we don't. And it would help me out a lot, and I'm sure a lot of other content creators, if you stuck to whatever the video was talking about or whatever the discussion was about. Because there's a thing called trauma dumping, and it doesn't really happen a lot. I wouldn't say that's trauma dumping because it's very different, but it's similar to trauma dumping. Trauma dumping is when someone who is experiencing some very heinous stuff will go onto like a stream and then just dump all of their feelings out onto the chat. Like, oh, my wife left me and then she shot my dog and then she took the kids and the Lambo and I'm poor and I'm thinking about committing suicide. Like that kind of stuff. I'm not equipped to handle it. Neither is the chat. But it happens a lot in streams. And I think people do a similar kind of therapy with content creators where they'll express their frustrations with the game to content creators because they feel like it, because it helps them get it off their chest. And it's like, I don't care really, like what your thoughts are on, you know, a random ship in the game getting changed when we're talking about like lore. Or something else. So all I ask is that, you know, be more aware of the people who you're you know, commenting in, that kind of stuff, and try to stick to the topics. Because I've seen it more and more often recently where people are doing that, which is weird, honestly. But what if we express our frustration with country music song? That is what country music is designed for. Outrageous! I know you have a direct line to Chris. I do not have a direct line with Chris Roberts. That is Buster the Destroyer. She is the only one of us who has a direct line with Chris Roberts, and she 100% uses it as a power move to completely control the entire game. So what I'm saying is if you're complaining, if you're wondering about why Star Citizen is delayed, it's because of Buster the Destroyer. Love you, Buster. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I haven't seen anybody really complain about this wave so far. But it is important that to remind people if someone complains about it, be like, oh, it's rough. It's like, yeah, CIG said it. But it's a great kind of like look into the life of an avocado, of like the kind of patches you play. Because most of the time as an avocado, it's not fun. It's more like, hey, this is cool, but this feature barely works. Or the feature works, but I crash every 5 minutes. There's sometimes crazy things that you can find, but... So Blame Buster got it. Exactly. Man, your character's in so much trouble with the new Star Trek RP. I know, right? So we have to woo Buster to, and we'll yes, I'm saying that if you subscribe to Buster the Destroyer, that's your ticket into talking with Chris Roberts. Funny you make that reference, Seb Austin. I have a direct line to Chris Roberts, but I can only tell him to form on my wing, attack target, and return to base. Funny you make that Wing Commander reference because that is, to a degree, what we're seeing with AI development is going to be similar to that, especially with Squadron. They have an entire system built for that. They showed off the early versions of it back in 2012 when they first released the pitch trailer. So, avocado toast is why we can't have homes in game. Yes. All right, as is tradition, we're going to do model sharing and all that kind of stuff because I finished up some more models, some more battlesuit models for Tau. I'm almost done. I got to get their guns, which I haven't finished yet, which is why they're missing their guns. But it's all magnetized, and you'll kind of see the magnets in there if you look at hard enough. I only have 2 more suits. No, I only have 4 more suits after this. So 4 more suits and 3 vehicles and I'm done, which is not bad. I've done a bunch of drones, 4 separate units of infantry, 6 total. I have like 60 infantry troops, at least 20 drones. I've done 8 suits. It's been intense. So I'll show you as is tradition. You can see the nice thing there. Get his. I'm really happy with this basing right here because I painted this right here. It was actually just gray plastic and it's been painted now. Looks pretty good. This is an iridium suit. And then the Chasla, I think they're called, the sergeant of the suits. Do they make the injured or destroyed pieces, or is that not how the game works? There are some that they do, but there's a lot of secondhand, but you can also buy these kits and turn them into destroyed pieces if you wanted to, for like terrain or for like the dioramas, as a lot of people do. Because they're all in pieces. Like these are all separate pieces you should put together. So like you could build like just the torso and kind of rough it up a little bit and put it out there. Sort of. These are gamer grass is what they're called. Or something like our game grass. These little bits right here. And if you look at it closely, you notice like a slight rise there, right here. That's just corkboard. Corkboard that I painted and put a lot of flocking on. So what do I think of the new Expanse ship? We're going to talk about the refinery ship here in a moment, so stick around. The first thing we're going to talk about is 317. All right, so there's a reason why the title is the biggest small patch ever, and that's because holy shit, there been a lot of additions. So along with the major additions of things like refueling, selling back to shops for loot rebalance. I think it's also, they have like the coffee shop on there, and I don't remember if they have much else on there, but also like say the ATC binding, so you can now bind, call ATC to a little bind. You also have a turret stagger rework. Previously, all weapons would stagger by weapon group, and the lower RPM weapons setting to stagger rate. Now weapons will stagger by weapon rate, weapon type, and then weapon group. This means that the stagger rate will be calculated for each weapon type within a group. However, only weapons up to fire rate of 750 RPM will stagger. It doesn't make sense for higher RPM weapons to stagger due to the stagger rate being too high to notice the difference. Also, pilots can now stagger their weapons alongside turret gunners. There is currently no default key for binding staggered firing to pilot seats assigned. Okay, that's pretty cool. They brought back the fucking Rattlers, baby. Cluster missiles are back. Woo! Cluster missiles will now launch their mini missile again. Doing so will launch a target, pick a below a specific impact. Did we get is there a hype train going on? There's a hype train. Holy balls. Where did we get 120? What the heck? Did we get a huge like wave and I didn't see it? Yeah, Mount Stunner dropped a bunch of subs. And Colonel Mortimer dropped a bunch of subs. The Sci-Fi dropped a bunch of subs. Why? I didn't even see all of that. Thank you all. Thank you all for that level 5 hype train. I am not worthy. That is very sure. You guys got the 17. Oh my god. I wasn't anticipating you getting my... I will do a giveaway tomorrow because of that. Because we got 17 out of 17. Anywho. Pay attention to the class. I'm watching the chat for both of them. Start dancing. No, Sandy. So missiles, cluster missiles now can fire, and you can dumb fire them, and then they'll launch there as well. To fly. In addition, missiles will no longer attempt to fly straight instead of maintaining their angular momentum. So they should no longer fly in circles. Okay. Quality of life changes. IFCS. A ship's afterburner will now only drain when actually thrusting, while enabling cruise control when decoupled. While enabling cruise control when decoupled will force decoupled mode on. Okay. We also added an optional weapon keybind to fire all weapon groups at once. To assign the keybinding, please launch the game, click Options Keybinding, and then Advanced Controls Customization, the bottom left in the vehicles. Weapons tab, and you say Fire All Weapons. Little small updates there. Ground vehicle emissions changes. We have adjusted ground vehicle signature emissions so that they are more difficult to detect at increased ranges. Fuck yes. Physicalized ship components. We completed a major overhaul on personal inventory storage to accommodate the recent addition of ship components to the inventory. These changes will allow you to move ship components and weapons to different inventory spaces, including into ships, and transport them to other locations. As part of this update, all ship components have been given the new SCU sizes relative to their game size. To better allow players to transport these components, ships have had their personal inventory size increased. However, you may need a larger ship to transport larger components. As a note, this is a temporary measure while we await cargo refactor. Very nice. Welcome, Zodiac. Sounds like the alert systems are broken today. No, I turned off the alert systems. For this stream, I turn it off for the alert systems. We don't do a lot of dancing and stuff like that because it's for YouTube, and YouTube is a lot more stingy when it comes to like, oh, you played like 10 seconds of a sound that might be copyrighted. So I'm just like, nope. And for those of you who are wondering, just kind of back at a, behind the scenes sort of thing. The issue with not being monetized is not usually the money, because I barely get any money from YouTube. The issue of not being monetized is not being found. Because if you're not monetized, you don't get prioritized by the algorithm, which means that it's much more difficult to grow or get those people to watch your videos, which means it's a lot more difficult for people to like find you. So. Black Sky Legion, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. All right. Quantum. Quantum has now been integrated into the back end of the game with very limited fashion for testing. It is now simulating NPCs purchasing quantum fuel, regular fuel, and repairing at stations, which players will notice primarily via the prices of those three commodities fluctuating more than before. So that's the first step. In addition, Quantum is now impacting the frequency of certain environmental missions in certain areas, mostly around rest stops, such as the Pirate Scout EM, Freighter EM, and a few others. Nice. The ability to disable camera spring movement. While in third-person mode, the camera spring can add dynamic motion when the vehicle is moving. However, sometimes it isn't desirable, particularly when you're trying to get long lens shots where even the smallest movement is greatly exaggerated. Turning the camera spring off will disable the extra motion and keep the camera perfectly locked in place relative to the vehicle. So, that doesn't even mention the change in weapons. There's a full change in the personal FPS weapons have gotten, they now have dynamic animations. So their animations before were just canned. Now they change a little bit depending on like the way the weapons are, the way you're moving, the way your body is. They've changed some things up like that as well. They've changed other turret issues, like turret movement is different too. There's so many like small changes they've made over the course of 3.17 that it's a quality of life patch, but to say it's just a quality of life patch is underselling it, because you also have refueling and selling. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are upset about the loot table and all that kind of stuff and looting and selling. Well, and I will say this beforehand. I agree that limiting the purchasability of weapons is not a good idea, especially in a loot system that we have now. But I also didn't think that the prisons were a good idea. Still don't think they're a good idea to implement right now. I think eventually they are, but not right now. And they've also completely screwed half of the stuff they've added before this. And so, like, I understand why they did it. I understand why people will be upset about it, but I am not as upset as other people will. It's just that kind of situation. I mean, I would say it's general. That's a general statement to say that all content creators said it was going to be a small crappy patch. There were certain content creators that said it were going to be a small crappy patch. And I certainly said it was going to be a minor patch in comparison to other major patches, though it still would have major aspects. And as we've gone along, it's had even more aspects added to it, which are pretty cool. And we haven't even gotten to Invictus yet, y'all. Like, Invictus is going to add a whole different slew of things that they haven't added to 317. My guess is they'll probably bring back the Bengal, a lot of the stuff they did last year, maybe added a little bit more. And that's coming in May, coming in May. That's going to be 317.1, which will also probably get the Scorpius. Now, I know that people are saying, well, the whole A isn't in the game yet. And the answer is yes, the whole A is not in PTU yet, but it will. And that's not unusual. Not a Bengal tour. I think we'll get they said that we're going to do another Javelin tour. I wouldn't be surprised if we got some. I would really like to see a flight show, like a flyover of Microtech. You know, just at certain times. PTU seems more stable to me right now than 316 PTU. Probably, but there's a lot of other small bugs that are attached to it. If you could buy everything in stores, then you would not have this. Are you talking about, like, looting? I feel like making stuff findable and tradable players to player makes for interesting player-to-player interactions and incentivized exploration. I agree, too. I think that there should be some things that you can purchase in-game. The reason why it's weird is because if this was implemented while we had Pyro, it would make sense to say, hey, you want easy access to really, really damaging weapons? You better have really good reputation with, like, security forces or the UEE, or take a trip to Pyro and go buy some on the black market. Making it difficult to acquire, but still acquirable. People would still complain, but it would at least be, to me, it's like, that's game. That's like what the game's going to be. Like, you're not going to be able to, like, walk on into what's effectively New York City and be like, I would like that rocket launcher and that railgun, please. And then just walk out with it on your shoulder. It's just not, that's not how that's going to work. You're going to have to go to Space Texas to get those things. Really cool to see the UEN do a live fire exercise. The U.S. Navy did this with their battleships with blank shells. It did flood out a gas station when they did a full broadside once. Woof. Gotta love Bremen, Space Texas. When's the last time you were in New York? A while ago, to be fair. Just generally speaking, I assume that it's frowned upon to walk around with a shoulder-mounted RPG. No, Pyro's not Space Texas. Pyro is, I was going to say Space Detroit, but no, that's Magnus. Pyro is just Arkansas. It's groups of violent gangs that are competing against one another to determine dominance. Was in Brooklyn yesterday. Can confirm that people walking around with RPG 7s. Do I think Bremen's being worked on now? No, there's no way. Bremen is close, but I don't think it's in the first range. I think Bremen would be one of the first systems we get during beta. I think that the main systems we're going to get before they reach to a beta status will be Pyro, or obviously Stanton, Pyro, Nyx, Castra, Magnus, Odin, and probably after that, Terra will be probably like the beginning of beta, and then I think Bremen would be shortly after that, because I think there's a jump point between Castra and Bremen. If not, then Tohill, then Bremen. Did we know Disco was moving to the UK? I did. I knew a couple months ago. I think he announced it on the Star Citizen Live, like back in December. He's just waiting on his visa confirmation because, you know, obviously he's moving there for work. So he has to, so CIG is filing the paperwork, and then the UK government has to approve of him to go there and work, even though he's still working, you know, that kind of thing. So. And the infrastructure is mostly non-existent, exactly like Arkansas. Hey, I have a pet theory that Arkansas actually is the roads in Arkansas are actually sentient. They're a sentient eldritch abomination that Arkansanians, whatever, the residents of Arkansas feed random people to as a means to appease the dark god. Which is why you just see garbage and just like car parts littered the side of the roads and everywhere in Arkansas. Get out. As an Eldritch Warlock, I take offense to being compared to Arkansas. Arkansonians? I don't know what people, Razorbacks, tell me what you call yourselves in your states. Can I ask questions to you, Mr. Pub? You can. You just did. There's a sign in Arkansas, only Arkansas, that reads, "The road is dangerous when underwater." This road is dangerous. See what I mean? See what I mean, citizen? That's what I mean. This road is dangerous when underwater. Because the creature needs water to survive. Sorry. What do you think the city gameplay will be like? I don't think it's going to be much. I wouldn't expect GTA Star Citizen or anything like that. I expect them to expand out a little bit with what we have with, you know, public transport systems. We might see roads inside cities at some point, but I would expect mostly the cities to grow based off of their what they need in game. So like, I'm sure they'll expand the shops to things like provision shops and different types of clothing shops and different weapon shops and components and subcomponents and all sorts of different shops that they'll expand to, probably more residential districts for people to kind of buy houses or buy apartments. And while that sounds insane, it's like, it's not really that complicated. CIG has all the tools and the pallets to build those out. It's just a matter of, it's not a priority right now. Like, they have to get everything else done before they get back to that. That's kind of what Montreal is designed to do. They're designed to go in after all the tools are made and flesh out an area that's been kind of prototyped and built. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Montreal is in charge of the rivers now. To take a lot of the tech that was coming into from the basic prototype river, and then they'll come in and just kind of like try to populate the rivers a little bit more or something like that. Arkansas or Arkansasiers. Okay. Arkansans. Okay. So water isn't dangerous, just the road. Exactly. They lower the Montreal down from the helicopter to steal your jewels from the vault. Yeah, Windlord. That's. So I've had to drive. I used to live in Tennessee. Those of you who don't know, I lived in Tennessee for about 10 years. That's where I met my wife. We both went to the same school in Tennessee. We got married in Tennessee. I worked in Tennessee after I got out of college for 5 years. Like. I've lived in Chattanooga, Nashville, and Knoxville. And my wife Cam grew up in West Tennessee, out near Jackson, and then also went to school in Chattanooga, and we've lived together in Nashville. Though I didn't really live in Nashville, I lived in Murfreesboro, but. So when my parents lived in California and I lived in Tennessee, when I would go visit them, I'd often drive, or like, I think I lived in California. We moved back to California I've been back from California to Tennessee multiple times driving. And when you go from California to Tennessee, you go through Arkansas. And dear God, those roads are terrible. You currently live just north of Nashville, though I work in Nashville itself. I know you work up, I know what you're talking about. I know the region. Oh gosh. It's the town that's just outside of the fort that's in Kentucky. I know that region. I lived in Tennessee. We're sorry to hear that. Listen, Tennessee was fantastic. And Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma. Hey, thank God, welcome to Evergame. Do you think that in the future, civilian status players will be able to join the game for free? No. I don't think everyone will be able, I don't think there'll be a free to play package or anything like that. I think there'll be free to play weekends, but I don't think CIG will ever make this game free to play. All his exes live in Texas, yeah. Why hang my hat in Tennessee? I know that. Do you think they will pre-nerf the X-Wing and then concede to player sentiment to half buff when they... No, they're gonna... When the gosh, what is it called? When the Scorpius comes out, it's going to be the best ship ever. It's going to be absolutely dangerous and overpowered, and it's just going to rip through everything, and it's going to be amazing. And then 317, then 318, they were going to nerf it, because what happens is CIG produces a ship. They're in a hurry to put it into the game, so just to make sure it works, they put some temp balances on it, slap those balances on it, make it work, out the door. And then after the fact, they come back and then they look at the stats and then they change it, which is what they did with the Ares. But if you say that, then people scream their heads off because, CIG sold this ship super expensive and made it overpowered. And then they took it, they knocked it down. So I feel like I was taking advantage of. And it's like, no, they rushed the job to balance it. And hopefully they'll go back and fix it in the future. But it can one-shot a Death Star. That's right. That's right, baby. Yeah, go for it, VLK. Do it. Black Baron, go for it. Clip this prediction and put it up there, because I can guarantee you everything, all of the stats on that ship make it an incredibly good single-player fighter. Up there with it's better than the Hurricane because you can use the weapons on it, the secondary weapons on it, with only one pilot. But if you have a secondary pilot, it will make it a little bit not the same as a Hurricane, but because you have like 4 size 2s or size 3 guns on the thing, like fixed forward, plus the other guns, whoo, lordy. And then the players get their hands on it and find every exploit they can to make it OP, because that's what players do. Exactly. Where do those hospital elevators landing zones lead? They aren't connected to the hospitals, I must know. I don't think they're intended, I don't think they're connected to the hospitals right away. I think there is a hospital connection to them, though. I'm shocked at how many players don't realize that all aspects of the game, are especially ships, are works in progress. I think the problem is that Star Citizen is treated by a lot of players and treated by CIG as a finished game. Like, that is CIG's legal status. They say that this game is done. Now, that doesn't mean that the game is finished. It just means that they have met their pre-sale whatever requirements. That's what they said that legally in a court of law, in a U.S. court of law. And even CIG has mentioned multiple times in the past that they kind of feel like Star Citizen is a released game that they have to update and fix as they go, even though it's not done yet. So, and the marketing is definitely saying that this is a released game. They're treating it like a released game. So, and to be fair, I know people are like, oh, that's marketing fucks up. Marketing does fuck up, but I don't think it's a marketing. I think people put way too much in marketing to say like, oh, this is all marketing's fault. It's like, nah, it's management's fault. It's how management's trying to do this. And I think at its core, they're kind of in a shitty situation where until Squadron is out, they're making 2 games at once. And, you know, when you're making 2 games at one time from scratch with a brand new studio, you're gonna take a lot longer than if you were making 1. So, that's the problem. So it's kind of dragging them down. Who won the Nomad, by the way? Oh, I was going to draw it here, but I've ended it was ended at the very beginning of the stream, and I'll draw it here in a moment. To be fair, completely fair, I've played far more broken release games. Star Citizen is one of the better games out there in terms of balance and competent additions to gameplay. CIG is very dedicated and good at what they do. And it's just that the game's systems at their core are not finished yet, and there's several aspects of the game which just aren't done. And it's hard to make a game fun when someone signed up to the game to be to do salvaging, and salvaging keeps getting kicked down the road. It's like if you played an FPS and you got into an FPS game, you bought an FPS, and it said FPS, as its thing, everything said it was going to be an FPS, and the FPS aspect of the game kept getting pushed down the road. It's just like a random explorer simulation. Yeah, you're gonna be pissed. I get it. So it's that kind of, again, weird situation, that kind of stuff. Star Citizen, the ever-evolving game. As long as people keep throwing money at CIG, they're going to keep evolving it. That doesn't mean that the game will never be done. It does, sort of, but it doesn't mean that the game... When you often hear people say, like, oh, the game will never be done, they often say, what they mean is that the game is never coming out, it's a scam, and the answer is not. The game's never going to be released because it's never going to be finished until they run out of money. They'll keep adding things, and it'll keep going. Because we're already seeing, like, kind of, they're reaching that point where they're butting up against the laws of physics. It's not just, we need to get this aspect of the game done. It's not like light speed is a limit. It's a hard limit, and we can't take light speed yet. So we're going to have to figure out some workarounds to make sure that we can, like, reduce lag with players. When did this AMA start? About an hour ago, about 15 minutes ago. So that's always a good sign. And as anyone will tell you, if you want to know what CIG is doing, see what they're working on. And they're working on things like back end. I always forget the name of this, but it's the layer that is just under. It's like a persistence layer or the replication layer. I always, because in my mind right here, replication layer, I think of it as like a river. Like a stream that's constantly flowing. That's how I visualized it. So I want to keep on to say the river. It's like, not the river. It's not the stream. But they're working on the replication layer. There's active work on it. There's been sprints that finished this month on the replication layer. We'll probably hear about it in the monthly report next week or so to see what new sprints they're working on. We'll probably also see some updates on the progress tracker in the next 2 weeks about some of those things as well. So, do you think the music is a little loud? I can turn it down a little bit. The problem with the music is that it's not always consistent.
I'm fly. I'm pilot.
Yeah, there's no giveaway. Oh, you're talking about the exclamation point March? Exclamation point April should be the new one. Oh, I forgot to put the link. That's why. Derp. Hold on. I'll change the link up. I switched everything but the copy link. I can even change the title, but I didn't change the freaking link. There we go. That should fix it. Try it now. What music? You seriously don't hear the music?
I'm fly. I'm pilot.
Miss MSI HCS, I'm going to let you know. This is an early build of PTU. They said that it's going to be a rough one because they have lots of issues they're still working out. They just released it to the public because they wanted to collect more data. Also probably because the date was breathing down their neck and they wanted to get it out before the quarter was finished. So, welcome to the Evocati. This is not unusual. Please make sure that you reference to read the patch notes and read the releases and announcements releases before grabbing pitchforks. Welcome to the avocado toast. Oh, does it say? Okay, I'll change it. See, I was being smart and tried to do it beforehand, and then I just forgot to change the actual argument because like we're giving away a blah. I'll change it. We'll give away. The picture's right. I've changed it. Should be fine. As I know it's Stella Fortuna, not Stella Fortuna, I just don't care. I'd love a fun fact. Grass, read? Why dare, how dare you, sir? These eyes do not read. What do you think of Sandy's tweet? The new update to Spectrum Orgs Guilds, new stuff from Montreal, Levski. We'll watch that. I haven't seen all of her tweets, but I did see a lot of this, the mentions behind it because of talking with Montreal. For example, Pyro is twice as big as Stanton. It's 13 AU. Stanton is about 4 AU. So it's almost 3 times the size of Stanton. Any predictions on persistence hangers release patch 3.18 or after? It depends because the replication layer is getting a lot of look in this last month or so. So I think it'll depend on if they add things like replication layers or other things to it. It seems like it's a good deal. We'll probably see it after 3.17 goes live and they start updating the progress tracker and the release view for 3.18. But I'd be fairly confident that, at least persistent hangers will make it into 3.18, if not 3.18.1, based off of their current trajectory. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get server meshing, because as I've said, the longer something gets delayed, because that was originally supposed to be in 3.17, then it's going to cause a cascade effect where eventually down the line, things will have to take a little bit longer because, other things need to get done first. So server meshing could still not make it this year, or it could. I'd say it's a 50-50 shot at this point. For all we know, we could get 200 systems by 2050. It's important to remember as well, when you're talking about systems in Star Citizen, is that we have this concept of Stanton as a system, and it's like super populated and there's tons of landing zones. That's not the rest of the game. Most of the systems in the Star Citizen universe are fairly barren. They may have a couple of outposts here and there, but not a ton. And the reason why they went back and kind of redid Pyro's lore is because they don't want to populate the game with empty systems before alpha is done. They kind of want to have systems that are going to have activity in them in major ways, with landing zones and other things to players to play around with. I think when they start moving away from that and start releasing things like Virgil and Toe Hill and those places which have some activity, but there's one landing zone and maybe a station here or there, but most of it is pretty empty, then you'll start to see a system start popping up much quicker. because the big jam in terms of making systems, it seems to be the landing zones, because they can get the planets done in like a month, and they can do the outposts pretty well. I think as the Montreal team is keying up their own abilities, they'll probably be able to pump that stuff out pretty quickly too, and copy and paste, because I assume that the old style colonial stuff will start being used for other places as well. Nyx is the only one major landing zone in the system, in 39 AUs across. Yeah. And I doubt we're going to see a ton of stations in Nyx either. Probably some stations which are old and disused. Not like outlaw stations, but like down on their luck stations. Which will probably be placed between some of the jump points, or at some of the jump points. Who cares about the number of systems? I back Star Citizen over Elite, No Man's Sky, exactly because there were less equals more detail in place of numbers. A lot of people care about the system numbers because when you look at the detail of how many star systems are added to the game, and you know how much detail each system has, people look at 100 systems. This what CIG says, like 100 systems, and they go, holy shit, it's going to be 2030. It's going to be like 2945 before they actually finish this fucking game. And, you know, it could be, but I doubt it. Just because knowing the lore, and I know that, of course, they can go back and change the lore. It's just that most of the places in the Star Citizen universe are fairly empty. There's a couple of places which are highly populated, but I would say it's about 50-50 in human space in terms of populated versus unpopulated. And most of the areas that are populated are much more like Nyx than they are like Stanton. You know, one landing zone, a couple of stations, maybe some outposts. Hey, Pyro's actually over 11 times bigger than Stanton, if you consider the surface area. That's true. There's more planets in Stanton than Stanton. Banshee's also inhospitable due to immense radiation from the pulsar at its center. You also have the black hole. I had it in my brain, and can't remember the name of it. But that's another one. Stanton was the test system precisely because of how crowded it is. Exactly. That's why they chose it. Because of its placement, which is like on the crossroads of trade between Terra and Sol, and because it's incredibly populated with stuff. There's a lot of different. It's like it's going to be unique. Like when you are buying things in the Star Citizen universe in the near future, like if you're playing the game when there are 5 or 6 systems out there, you're gonna want to go back to Stanton because Stanton's gonna have it all. It's the center of commercial activity in the Empire. It's New York fucking City, baby. You can get anything you want there. Stanton is Jita, yeah. Terra is similar, but Terra is super concentrated around Terra, Terra 3. Whereas, and similar with Sol, but Sol is super concentrated around Earth. A little bit of Mars, but mostly Earth. So Stanton is unique because it's just like the whole system is a giant shopping mall. Paul, Bar should have more population than the planet's surface. I hope so. Am I more Terran or Solian? I'm definitely a Terran. I mean, personally, fuck both of them. But if I'm going to back someone, it's going to back Terra. Because Terra has better ideas. The ideas that are going to keep humanity alive in the future. Whereas Sol is just clinging to the dead relics of an old world and praying that that they'll have enough guns to keep the Vanduul out. Traitor. Damn straight. Paul, question. Do you think it would be possible to live on your Prospector or Hull A? Do you think you're going to be needing to have a bigger ship to live aboard full time? Because it was like treating my ships like a small yacht vessels and living aboard full time instead of having an apartment. Yeah, that's definitely the plan. There needs to have a little bit more persistence added to make it easier to do so. But you can kind of do that now. You can live aboard ships most of the time. You still have to go in to go get, supplies, drinks, food, but you can do that now if you wanted to. How often do you play Star Citizen these days? I've been playing for years, but I'm getting so bored doing the same missions after mining, year after year plus mining. I do it on Fridays and Sundays. And the key is I always try to, shake it up a little bit. I'll do missions, but, I have this thing called Zero to Hero where I play an account that just has an Aurora. And I try to work my way up doing missions and other things just like a new player would. I do things like bar crawls where I just get together with people and we drink it at the various bars of Stanton and move around. I've done things like lore tours where when there's an event, go down to the floor and talk a little bit about the lore of all these different places. Star Citizen's a sandbox, and it's important to remember that in a sandbox, in the sandbox, your imagination and your own skills, your own creativity is what makes a sandbox fun. Star Citizen's goal or CIG's goal is to create tools which are interesting for you to use to make that sandbox more interesting, which they're doing. But it's at the end of the day, it's up to you. The whole A is surprisingly tiny. No, it's not surprisingly tiny. It's tiny. I do brawl crawl with my buddies. We hop on the bar and talk a VoIP and get drunk IRL. Yeah. It's the key is to keep things interesting and fun and doing different things and exploring different paths. Playing with friends is important, yes. And also important to remember that sometimes with Star Citizen, which with like any game, sometimes you get burned out. You just need to walk away for a bit. I can tell you like a lot of my friends who've played WoW no longer play WoW, but still play WoW. And anyone who's played WoW can tell you that's what it's like. Because you go, you play the game a bunch with your friends, you hang out, and then you just kind of lose interest and you wander away for a couple of months, and then just sucks you back in and you start doing it again. I do that often with things like Kerbal Space Program and RimWorld, other games like that, where I'll just come back and play the game a bunch, like a ton over, a week or two, and then just walk away and come back. I do with Star Citizen sometimes too. I'll just stop playing Star Citizen, or I limit my time of playing Star Citizen. RV living, small ship living, is only tolerable because of the destinations. Just my opinions. I agree. Did you see the Mongrel Squad video? I had no idea that there was such a big war going on. I don't know what you're talking about, Jordan. Sword horrors like that. That just happened and it was absolute meltdown. Discord channel deleted. Whoa. What are you talking about? What? I actually got away from WoW for about 4 to 5 years ago. I've done that before, Architect. Oh, KSP is definitely a game that which reminds me what happened to KSP 2. It's coming out this year. They have it released date is sometime this year. They went through some weird things with the initial crew who was designing it, got gutted and basically fired, and then they rebuilt the team from scratch. So, evening, Sneaky Shelly. Hey, Pickle Skin. We're going to talk about the other sneaky things that they dropped on us. The MISC here in a moment. Played WoW straight from 2005 till WOTLK, Wrath of the Lich King. And then quit. Played Classic briefly, then I remember why I quit. KSP2 is the end of the year, December 8th, if I remember correctly. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can't either. I'll be streaming KSP2 when it comes out. Ah, yes, Take-Two being greedy as usual. I mean, Take-Two is... I will say that my experience with the dev teams who work with Take-Two in their independent Take-Two stuff is not bad. They have a pretty light hand. I don't know what the fuck happened to the team because Squad is not who's building KSP2. It's a new team. And as I've seen with even like Star Citizen when it was early creation, there were a lot of turmoil because you hire the wrong people to do the wrong jobs and you can fuck everything over. So I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but the fact that they're still releasing it sounds good. Is Spectrum considered in-game internet? I would read my newspaper on my mobiGlass. Yes. So Spectrum is kind of an in-game combination of internet and TV. So there are broadcasts on Spectrum, on Spectrum channels, but you can also access information on Spectrum. It's a much more integrated combination of television and typical internet activity. It'd be like if, cable news mixed with YouTube, mixed with Google, mixed with Reddit, that kind of thing. You can even watch movies on Spectrum when they first come out. Like I don't think there are movie theaters in the Star Citizen universe. It's just, there may be hollow vids, but I think those are even old. So. I don't know, man. The things Take-Two is making Rockstar do right now make me lose the faith over the years. It's important to remember that Take-Two, like all companies, is a very large company. So what they're doing with something like Rockstar, their big moneymaker, is not the same thing they'll do to necessarily their indie guys. Same thing happens with EA and Microsoft and Sony and Ubisoft. There's various levels of control for a company over those sorts of things. Which, because in reality, every major development house is kind of scummy, just in general. We've all experienced it. But saying that like EA is evil or Activision is evil, it just kind of completely removes the devs who are often working independently and often have really good relationships with their publisher, because their publisher is much more like willing to take that risk, because like, hey, I can spend like $1 million, $20 million on these boys and they could produce $1 billion game. And it really depends on who's in charge too. It takes two, baby. Activision's higher ups are actively evil. Yes. Yeah, the higher ups of Activision, Bobby Kotick is the devil. Like he is the devil in every way, shape, or form. EA isn't evil. EA is misunderstood and goes through cycles of bad CEOs. That's what happens with EA. And they don't know what to do with half their devs. What's that? A nuanced take on we're talking about EA? Where's my pitchfork? It's easier to just kind of slap people and slap groups with one color paint and just say, this is them. These guys are bad. These guys are good. Like, remember when we were all talking about how the good companies were like Riot Games and Valve and CD Projekt Red? And then all of that information came out about how CD Projekt Red was crunching its employees and abusing them and paying them super low rates and doing all sorts of terrible things. They lost a lot of credit. I mean, like EA's, yeah, that's another way of putting it. Never associate malice, which could be associated with incompetence or stupidity. Don't think someone's evil. People are more likely stupid than evil. Question: with Rivers coming in, how long until CIG adds underwater scooters? Sooner rather than later, baby. What if EA bought CIG? It'd probably be more likely Amazon buying them, but it's probably doubtful. That would be an interesting April Fool's joke, though. Let's see that's coming up tomorrow. And just letting you know, the Captain's Table this week is going to be an April Fool's joke. It's coming on Saturday. It's not going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be great fun, but it's not going to be serious. And I'm looking forward to all of the comments complaining about our discussion. Question. Have the Vanduul attacked the Xi'an? Yes. It didn't end well for the Vanduul. Remember when CIG put up hours of procedural food? 24 hours. They put up 24 hours of them making procedural food, which was just them making procedural food for about 2 hours and then looping it. After 20 plus years in customer service, I can confirm people are far more stupid than evil. Yeah. Pretty sure the whole A will be part of a loaner package for people with the other series. Yes, definitely. They'll probably have like a Caterpillar or the Hercules in the whole A. Definitely. The game industry is full of passionate people, but also full of managers that exploit that passion. Yes, Desmond, that's 100% true. But it's again, important to remember that there are differences between managers who exploit the passion of people for profit and, managers who are legitimately passionate about the projects they produce. And sometimes they can be both. Someone can be passionate about the project that they produce and also want to make tons and tons of money. So being tangentially involved in game development, knowing many game developers I've gotten to know because I've been doing this kind of streaming stuff, and I've streamed other games, I've been to conventions and such. I can tell you that gaming is not an industry that I would say anyone should go into. If you want to go into gaming, you have to be really passionate about it. This is going to sound weird, but I kind of understand it. Gaming is kind of like the teaching of the software industry. Teaching, you have to want to do it because you get paid like garbage, you get treated like garbage, and you're constantly put way too much pressure on you, as well as like you're expected to like save the universe. And if something goes wrong, like how many times have I've heard this so many times, why don't we learn about X in school? And the answer is, we don't have the money or the time to teach those people that. Because you keep cutting our fucking funding. Gaming is very similar. They get paid like garbage, much lower rates than the actual like software industries. They often get fired. Like you often only work project to project. So one person who's say like a gameplay engineer will work for a project for 3 to 4 years, and if they're lucky, they stay on for a career of maybe 6 to 10 years. But most of them are going to get their pink slip right after the game has been launched, and they're on to the next. They usually go from one studio to another. That's why if you talk to the CIG devs at CIG, they'll often pull out like 7 or 8 different companies they worked for before they worked for CIG, because companies would fire them when they're done with their work. So, it's complicated. And the things that I've picked up on is that just like anything else in the world, gaming industry is filled with people who are predators, horrible people who are just grown-up kids, and people who are legitimately passionate about their career. Or the inclination states often dictate curriculum. Yeah, I mean, there's always with teaching, there's always federal guidelines for funding, but it's getting closer and closer to the point where I think most states, just especially states that are in the South, just would rather ignore federal funding for schools because they want to have complete control over everything. It's bad. Should the 400i have modular water landing skids to turn it into a catamaran? Which other ships would be given aquatic variants? Basically, every origin ship that's above the 400i or above should have aquatic variants, or should have aquatic access to. There are federal guidelines and Texas guidelines. That's true. They're often similar, and if you don't do the federal guidelines, if you don't get funding. and Texas guidelines, or just state guidelines in general for every state. I've taught in 3 states, so I know that, they're usually fairly similar because they have to be. Question, have you played 317 yet, and what do you think of it so far? I have not played it yet. I have seen people playing it, and I think it is good, but early. I think it's something that I would wait. If you are not somebody who's open for bugs or issues, then I would hold off for another 2 or 3 patches. Not like patches, but like 2 or 3 updates. Probably early next week before trying it out. What's the meaning of the Shields update in 317? Shields update? I don't know if there's a Shields update. That's another one that I haven't seen. So. I'm not going to get into politics, Pickle Skin. All I'm going to tell you is that that's all politics. It's not actually true. It's completely BS. And it's political stuff that's made up by politicians who are trying to scare parents so they can get reelected. That's all I'm going to say about that. Because it's not the point of the video. All right, let me pull up the thing I was going to pull up earlier. I'm going to talk about the refinery ship. All right, pull these off of Reddit here. All right, so welcome to the MISC Expanse. In your loader. Belta loader. So yeah, this is what it looks like. Is it me, or does this look like a bulldog? And now everyone's going to be spamming it. This is the most Belta-loader ship of all time. I mean, just look at it. So the cutaway and like its transcription, I think it's about the same size as the Mole. It seems to be about the same size as the Mole, which is pretty big. It's a solo ship as far as I can tell. I guess it's kind of got like a beetle look to it. Like when you look at it straight ahead like this, it looks like a bulldog a little bit with the stub nose. But like when you look at it to the side, it looks like a beetle. Hard to be a Star Citizen fan without being a fan of The Expanse. Yeah. So yeah, it's there's a couple of things that are important. It looks cool. It looks great. But the thing that's really important about it is that they also clarified something. Remember back when they said that the Starfarer was going to be the first refinery? I think that's probably, at this point, going to be temporary or possibly even discarded by now. Because it seems like the refinery is no longer, on Starfarer, is no longer being prioritized. Considering they're also moving away from refinery gameplay and moving towards salvage, engineering, and environmental gameplay. So I think, because John Cruz said this in the video, he said that the Starfarer will not be able to refine anything but fuel. Which means that we're going back to the useless Starfarer argument from way back when they originally made the statement, which was that I don't think the Starfarer will be able to refine quantum fuel anymore. I don't think that's the case. At the very least, it'll be a temporary solution, but I don't even see how they can do a temporary solution without a complete rework of the ship. The Expanse is the Odyssey killer. This is what people wanted with the Odyssey, which is a ship that could refine stuff. That's just not just fuel. They did mention that the Starfarer had one refinery reactor, didn't they? Yes, but it's only for fuel. That's the thing. So John Crews said it is they have one refinery reactor or two refinery reactors, but it's only for fuel. Similar to the Odyssey. So the MISC Expanse is the only refining ship that can refine minerals, refine everything. That is one hilarious soundbite. You got to watch The Expanse to understand it. It comes at the end of a very passionate speech. The problem about the idea that the Starfarer can refine quantum fuel is how does it get quantum fuel to refine it? There are no current ports or any way of actually adding quantanium to the refinery itself. Which I'm assuming that CIG is going to want to physicalize. And if the process of physicalizing the refinery to allow for the quantum fuel, it would also make no sense because unlike the Odyssey, which has a direct, nose pipe from mining to its refinery, there is no kind of connection for it. You have to build it, and at that point, why not just let it refine everything? So the answer is, if the Starfarer can refine fuel, it'll most likely only be able to refine hydrogen fuel using its scoops to fuel up and then refine that. And if it's added, if quantanium is added, it'll be added after the fact and after a full rework of the 600, the Starfarer. And by that point, we're probably already going to have this ship. Because this ship, even though it looks big, is, again, probably the size of the Mole and is probably going to get put into production when they finish up the latest line of gameplay that they're working on, which is currently engineering gameplay and atmospheric gameplay, which are kind of combining together. How do you think they'll balance the refinery timers on the Expanse? It won't be a timer. It'll be a mini game, a gameplay. We're gonna have to manage power and heat and other aspects to burn off the impurities. So this specific, you'll look at the is it the coke? Can't remember the name of it, but the rock with all of the minerals or the stuff you want to get out in it, and then you have to find ways of diluting the rock around the stuff you want, separating it, and then purifying that. And I think that's going to be the process of just basically filtering out the junk that you get. Coca-Cola? No, Coke. Here, let me show you all. This is something I learned by living in Tennessee for 10 years. Coke, spelled just like Coca-Cola, C-O-K-E, K-O-K-E. C-O-K-E is gray, hard, and porous fuel with high carbon content with few impurities, made by heating coal or oil in the absence of air, a destructive distillation process. It is important to an industrial product used mainly in iron ore smelting, but also used as a fuel in stoves and forages when high pollution is a concern. The unqualified term coke usually refers to a product derived from low ash and low sulfur bituminous coal, a process called coking. Similar product called petroleum coke or pet coke is obtained by crude oil in oil refineries. Coke may also be formed naturally by geographic processes. I guess yeah.
Drugs.
Impurities and inert materials. Exactly. Likely relative impurities, especially when they decide to compound materials where you have to decide what to refine. Exactly. Pulling out the right refining, which you want to refine, will determine, those sorts of things.
Drugs.
It's used in the Bessemer project for making steel. Yeah. I'm stoked. I was in the PTU. It's working great and then a little sluggish, but it'll be expected in the PTU. Yeah. I would expect a buggy PTU.
Distress bacon.
Have y'all not listened to the Billy Joel's Alien Town? Iron and coke, chromium steel. I have not actually heard that. But where I lived in Tennessee, in the Cumberland Plateau, there was large quantities of coke near the surface, so it's easy to acquire. And I remember there was, like, when I was doing history, a lot of the locals would burn coke as a means of heating their homes, because it was cheap to get. It was easy to find, and it was very efficient. I expect every patch to be buggy. The first 2 weeks in PTU are super buggy. Yeah. But I think that's what you're probably looking at with the process of refining.
Just an old-fashioned cowboy. Of
refining on your own ship is more of a process of filtering out the impurities and the various junk rock that you have until you've worked your way down to what you specifically want. And in the process, you're probably going to have to make a decision of destroying some of the stuff you've mined so you can get a more pure form of it, or getting less pure ingredients but more quantity. So you'll have to start making the decisions between quantity versus quality, whereas quality will allow you to gather more. The process will take longer and be more expensive, but you'll get more in result, or get more for it. But as the economy kind of expands, taking all that time to refine something very specifically will probably end up making it difficult to sell unless you have the right buyer effectively. Oh, extremely hazardous to your health, Omega. Yeah, sorry, R-Corp. That one's already been closed. I haven't drawn it yet, though. I think there'll be some crafting materials to be mined too. Yeah, of course. CIG has talked about crafting being in the game for a while. The concept that they've had for crafting, last I heard, was more small items, less massive assembly lines, and more what they used to call overclocking, which was effectively taking current weapons and using separate, or like armor or equipment, and pulling an aspect out of it that makes it better at one thing but worse at others. So like taking a shield generator and making it like very, very good for like very, very difficult, like higher HP, but also making its recharge, as a result of making its recharge rate absolute garbage, or just takes too long. So, but it requires you to kind of tweak it and build it your own. Will it be possible to fly and refine at the same time? Probably. I mean, it'd be hard to tell until they get the engineering gameplay online. But I imagine they're probably using bigger power plants or multiple power plants to get that working. Yeah, I don't imagine that if you're running a refinery full tilt, you're going to be able to do heavy maneuvering. You probably can still move, but not crazy. How popular do you think the Expanse will be for players to be flying around in game? Probably fairly low. I wouldn't expect the MISC Expanse to be super popular unless it's part of a fleet or part of a group. I expect that most people who mine will probably have a MISC Expanse in their fleet, just to have it. But I feel like the people who are having expanses are going to be just part of mining guilds. Lord Daddy. So I'm sorry I'm late. Let's make the MISC Expanse and how horrible that thing is. It's not a bad name. It makes sense. You just have to call it the MISC Expanse constantly, not just the Expanse. Any insight into the roadmap roundup this week? Sure. It's pretty simple. We'll pull it up real quick. So it's important to remember that with the roadmap roundup, they've kind of stepped away from doing a bunch of updates for various things, and we're kind of at the end of a bunch of sprints. So a lot of stuff is being updated, but a lot of stuff is just kind of coming to an end. And they're going to start the process of meeting together, figuring out what worked, what didn't, moving on to the next sprint to continue to develop whatever they need to or publishing what they can. So as a result, we have two things. The Progress Tracker checkpoint/skip point tool, a creation of an editor tool as part of the Subsumption Visualizer, which allows for the creation of files defining setups for specific checkpoints such as spawned entities, their position, and loadouts. This is being added to the Squadron 42 feature schedule. So more stuff for Squadron 42. The big thing, if you watch the video that I did on the monthly report for Squadron 42, was they're looking right now on how to load into the game and load into save points, which is immersive and doesn't have any loading screens, because they want to reduce the amount of loading screens where at all possible for every aspect. And so I'm assuming that the checkpoint/skip point to tool is probably being developed to try to alleviate that factor, because it allows for a Subsumption Visualizer, which allows for the creation of files defining setups and specific checkpoints such as spawned entities, their position, and loadouts. Allows for them to more fine-tune where things are and what the client will see and such. We're going to see a lot of that going forward, a lot of stuff moving towards Squadron 42 as it's trying to reach a state where they can, finish it. And then, of course, the release view. They're going to do the whole A. So the whole A is coming out in 3.17, and the subsequent next patch is 3.17x. That's about it. Pretty light one. I think we're going to get a bigger one next patch, or next week, just because of the ending of 3.17's kind of work for a lot of the downstream teams. And I think we're going to get a lot of, or the upstream teams, and I think we're going to get a lot of downstream teams next week, the next week and 2 weeks. Do I think the Expanse will use the methods that are currently in refineries? No. They'll be a player controlled. I think that the refineries as they currently are will probably change a little bit, but not that much. Maybe 1 to 2 Expanse Prospector, since the former can hold twice as many saddlebags. Yes, they'll definitely almost always be at least 1 Expanse with multiple prospectors or multiple moles. 2 to 1 is probably a good ratio. 2 prospectors, 1 Expanse for every 2 prospectors to work as a team. I don't think there are 4 patches a year. I think it's 8. Yeah, there's on between 4 and 8. We have the main patches and then the .x patches. But so Naz was wrong when he said that the roundup would mention persistence. I mean, Naz is often wrong. I think what Naz is mentioning, he's not wrong in the sense that the downstream teams are going to start coming in, or the next situation's going to come in. It's just we're probably not going to see that until the next roundup. He just jumped the gun a little early, because a lot of those finishing, a lot of those sprints were finishing this month. So and you got to remember that when Jake pulls the JIRA for the roadmap update, it's usually a week ahead of time. So all of this information came out from Wednesday, March 23rd, possibly even March 16th, or the 21st. So a lot of stuff was ending nebulously around that time. So main content patches, .1 patches for bug fixes. Well, sometimes they add new things in there. Wouldn't the refining time take longer than the mining time? Maybe we could find needing more Expanse than prospectors. Likely, but you're also going to have a lot of there's going to be time for maneuvering. There's going to be a time where, this is important to remember, mining is going to slow down. The idea of you making 1 million UEC per run in an hour is going to go away. The dynamic economy is starting to come online, and that's going to start changing the output. So if everyone rushes to make Quantanium's price is going to go to the floor, because some basic economics, if you have a large amount of supply, the demand is going to be very far down, which means that there won't be as many people who are willing to pay for that price, usually because it's overpriced. Like the price of that's going to go down as a result, because less people will be willing to purchase simple things and whatever. Rarity, scarcity, lots of issues like that. So as a result, you cannot just produce one good. You're going to have to diversify. You're going to have to find goods that are valuable in specific areas. So if you're mining Quantanium, you're probably going to have good return, but the current return of Quantanium is artificially high in comparison. And you're also going to have to remove the saddlebags and attach them to the refinery, or dump them into the refinery. So you have the process of unloading, dumping, and then reloading which will take several minutes. So having multiple expanses will probably happen, but you're also not going to want to, like, everything's going to be slowing down. This is just a reality. Tractor beams will help, but tractor beam it's going to be more precise than you think, a lot more fidgety. Paul, warehousing and distribution things for mining will be for mining goods. Yeah, there'll definitely be things like caterpillars, which you'll just dump ore onto while you're going to mine, and then that caterpillar will work as kind of like a platform to hold a bunch of the materials while the refinery is going. But even then, you're going to add who's the caterpillar pilot, who are the people who are moving things off of that sort of thing. It adds complexity to the whole process. You're going to have a multiple set of saddlebags, I thought. I mean, everyone has multiple sets of saddlebags, but if you have a bag that's filled with rocks, you can't just magically put that bag of rocks into a grinder. You're going to have to physically pull it out and then move it over. Hey, SFX, thank you much for them biddies. Yeah. Then happy almost weekend, everybody. Yeah, it's weekend for me. I got work off tomorrow, so. Do I think there'll ever be use of hybrid of the Expanse and a Prospector in one ship? Yeah, it's called the Orion. It's called the Orion. It has a refinery on board. It has smaller mining drones, and it also has a giant fuck-off laser designed to mine. Maybe I was being a little sarcastic. I keep forgetting that, like, people... Yeah, there is. It's called the Orion. It's a giant ship. Let me pull it up. I keep forgetting some people just are new to the game and don't know about these older ships. Robert Space Industries Orion. So what you're seeing there is tractor beams and a main laser plus a mulcher. I think there's multiple lasers, but this is the Orion. This is the ship that's going to be processing. Those, like, these things here, these giant things, are storage bays. I think they're a combination of storage bays and refineries. Yeah. Javs can go into Atmo. That's a misconception. Javs can go into Atmo. They just can't go into thick Atmo. And you wouldn't want to use an Orion in a thick atmosphere planet anyways. You wouldn't want to use ships in a thick atmosphere planet. You'd just like to use energy efficient vehicles and like ground bases for that. That's going to be so fun to blow. I mean, observe from afar. Hi, Paul. Question: can you spawn an expanse at a location and then catch a lift back to the spawn prospect, to spawn a prospector and solo mine refining the belt? Yeah, you could, but at that point, if you're like, you're gonna need some way of getting back, and so you're gonna have someone fly you out there anyways. So if you're already there, you might as well just work with somebody else. Well, how new are some people here? Well, that's the question. There's always, as Jared likes to say, every show is someone's first show. Not playing the PTU? Not yet. I'm going to wait a little bit until the PTU is more kind of settled. I'll be playing tomorrow, but I'll be on Twitch. Jiro, you're not new. They said the Expanse will be able to haul bags or refine and pass it off into cargo ship. Does that mean it makes boxes of refined goods? No, it means it has saddlebags. It means that it'll probably have some sort of receiving system like saddlebags. PTU is rough, yes. Cascadian, where's my Crusader Space Ambulance ship at? Starter ship at? Well, it's going to be an Anvil ship, and it's going to be the Anvil Atlas chassis. I can almost guarantee you that. Though we don't really need an ambulance. Yeah, I've said this before. They need an ambulance.
And his dog calls himself an outlaw.
They need an ambulance because the Cutlass Red can't be in the UEE's military service. So there has to be some sort of military ship that functions as an ambulance. And before anyone goes, but Paul, that's the Apollo. That's a flying fucking clinic. There's no way the Apollo is an ambulance. What happened to Odin? Odin is still under development with Squadron 42. And Odin is not going to come out until Squadron 42 is out because there's probably going to be a bunch of stuff about Odin that they want you to find out in Squadron 42, not Star Citizen. I'm waiting until I finish grinding out 100 sets of Morzov armor and FS9 Jins. Okay. The thumbnail shows it has a receiving system in the rear center. It will pick up raw materials there and then feed it into its side saddlebags once refined. There we go. I think most newer people aren't around when the saddlebag system got announced by CIG. That's true. And FS9 guns. Okay. Question: Will be able to fit the Expanse on a Kraken or Liberator? Based off of my guesses, it seems to be about the same size as a mole. So it could definitely fit on a Kraken. Because the mole is about the same, a little bit bigger than a Freelancer in terms of its length. It's taller, but... Squadron 42 when? 1 hour, Agent. 1 hour. I know back in the day... was a big thing about getting Squadron 42 to get citizenship. I mean, do you think now that to get citizenship since you were 10 years and since we're 10 years and do you think the game is going to be easier to get in the game? No. I think citizenship is still going to be tied to Squadron 42, and I think you'll still be able to get it in game, but it's going to be reputation based, and it's probably going to be having to do with specifically with the UEE. So I imagine it's not going to be easier to acquire, but it'll be easier to acquire if you play Squadron 42. Question, since I'm new here, Evergame, are they ever putting non-sniper rifles in the store? All I see is snipers and no assault rifles. What? Are you joking? Is that in 3.6? Is that in 3.17? I thought it was the reverse. Well, Star Citizen have green cards. Not that kind of citizenship, champ. MISC Expanse. So if the MISC refinery takes saddlebags of raw material, what does the end refinery product look like? If you refine at a station, you pick up its cargo blocks. It'll probably be effectively its own kind of receptacle system, which will probably look like cargo boxes. But we'll see. You may have to supply cargo boxes to those areas, or it'll just be some sort of end state that they've done. They've not decided yet. It's probably not going to be done until its physicalization is in. But I can almost guarantee you that there'll be a process upon which that you will have to acquire the material from its end state and then push it on. Hey, thanks for the Twitch, the Prime sub there. Let's do 50, 50, 50, 50. Bunch of 50s for y'all. Oh, in the website store. No, they do sniper rifles. We also do shotguns. On the stores, they're just never gonna have. They're probably not gonna have assault rifles. Because assault rifles are common. Yes, FPS equipment is not worth the cash purchase. Do you think they'll allow you to effectively buy your citizenship in the form of large donations and whatnot? Oh yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. That's the UEE to a T, baby. You don't want to work, but you're rich. But yeah, it's going to be rep based. I can almost guarantee you it's going to be rep based. And yeah, you could probably buy it, but it's going to cost you a lot of money compared to like working for money. Because a lot of times you'll be able to work with, organizations. They'll pay you money and your reputation goes up. So you might be able to work for profit for the UEE and still get citizenship. To be determined, future scenario where it can be converted into shipping boxes like current box materials from refinery stations. Yes. It's just saddlebags to refine material content, so it could be dropped in site and transferred to a cargo ship for sale if desired. Yeah, but I mean, I doubt that they're going to have a situation where you have to drop the saddlebags from the ship and then it just be without saddlebags. There'll probably be some process, and by the time that's fully in game, that'll be like by the time the Odyssey, the Expanse is in game. We don't even know that's probably a year away. We don't know what the game's going to look like. Squadron 42 is like Schrodinger's game. CIG has a lot of excitement, a lot of excellent devs, and made a lot of impressive things, which many of which are broken because of servers. But they've also made a bunch of decisions which are in hindsight not helpful to the slightest. So now I have no idea which way Squadron 42 will go. It could be excellent or hilariously bad. For those of you who are new, who may not know me, hi, I'm Paul. I spoiled myself on the entirety of the Squadron 42 story by accident. So I know the entire story. I know all the twists. I know who does what and why. I know all of the details of the game. I know the beginning, middle, and end of the game. Didn't mean to. Because CIG accidentally leaked all of the audio files for Squadron 42 years ago. So I can tell you this. If it is as good as Star Citizen is now, with the story they want to tell, it will be a good game. If they are able to improve the experience even further, which they will between now and release, the game will be probably one of the better games of the year that it's released. I wouldn't expect it to be Game of the Year. I wouldn't expect it to be mind-breaking and shattering of like expectations. It's Wing Commander, but for the 21st century. If you play Wing Commander, you know what you're to expect in terms of like gameplay aspects. But the fact that they're going for heavy replayability and they have just so many actors who have got such high quality backgrounds, and they did a really good job. All of the actors really did put in a lot of effort into the game, into playing their characters. The story is interesting. It feels intense based off of the audio that I've listened to, including wild lines from in-game audio. But I would not expect it to be like earth-shattering. It's a solid MCU quality movie. It's not going to win any awards, but you'll have a fun time. With that being said, Paul, you have to be a fighter pilot in Squadron, so or you can salvage something. Likely, salvage being put into Squadron has more to do with aspects of the game, because as I've said, the point of Squadron is here is the end goal. You are a pilot. Your job is to accomplish this goal. Here are your tools. Good luck, son. GTA 5 level? I don't know. I haven't finished GTA 5. It's not cinematic gold, but you're not going to be bored playing it. Basically, it's a popcorn thriller. But Paul, you're forgetting that Buster called Chris Roberts on her bat phone and had to change everything with Squadron 42's story just so you no longer know what it was. I forgot about that. Yeah. Will Roberts himself greet us at Seoul? No, but Chris Roberts is I know Chris Roberts' cameo. Chris Roberts is in the game. He's in Squadron. I pledged for Squadron 42 with the PU as a bonus, a continuation past the story. Oh, so you got actually both of them. You got the first one and the second one. That's nice. Do you think the Odyssey will release for IAE this year with the return of Jax, Space, Jeremy Clarkson, McCleary? Possibly. We'll see. Chris Roberts is the game. It's not surprising. Not really. Yeah, it's how it is. Like Wing Commander 3 that drew me in good, or the Wing Commander movie. But I don't think we're going to see the Odyssey the end of this year. I don't think so. I think a lot of people are putting to it, but that's a Carrack level ship, and it took them a long time to get the Carrack done, and they still haven't finished the Banu Merchantman. So. The Squadron is basically, here's a dessert, here's a fork, there's a horde of zombies, get the other side. Yeah. Here's a desert, here's a fork, there's a horde of zombies, get the other side. The best way I can describe the game is, there are parts of Squadron 42 which feel like I could do this all day kind of experience. You're sitting there going like, finally I got through this. Why? Shut the fuck up, old man. I don't need, no, I'm done. No, I'm done. That kind of experience. And I'm probably waking up my wife because I'm being very loud. That sort of exasperation. It's important to remember that when Chris Roberts was designing Squadron 42 and Star Citizen, he was playing a lot of fucking Dark Souls. So I'm not saying that Squadron 42 is the Dark Souls of space games. I'm just saying there's going to be a lot of what if Wing Commander and Dark Souls had a baby. Dark Souls in space. Oh no. It's not going to be forgiving. Remember, you don't get the F8 for finishing Squadron. You have the option to purchase the F8 in game when you finish Squadron. Freddie Prince Jr. cameo? Not that I heard, sadly. There is someone who's surprising who's a cameo that surprised the shit out of me when I heard his voice. Holy fuck did I, it was like, wait, what? And then I remembered, oh right, yeah, he's worked with Chris before. Just like, damn, son. All I asked, does the UE Super Dreadnought gun show up? Space gun show up? I'm not going to tell you, because that's a spoiler. Darth Souls. It's not Nick Cage, no. No one will guess it here. I can guarantee it. Hey, Eamon. Very funny. Yeah, it's. Oh, look at Hammerhead. Here's a handgun. Good luck, son. Terry Crews. Yes, Terry Crews. Think of the inspiration from Dark Souls for Chris Roberts is less the actual mechanics and more the experience. Because Chris Roberts talked a lot about this when he talked about like Death of a Spaceman, which was he wanted an experience that was punishing but not unfair. He wanted to make a better experience than Dark Souls, but he wanted to use that as the basis where death mattered and death hurts. And that's kind of the approach he's reaching with Squadron, is that like you are going to reach stages where you probably don't think you're going to make it. And doing something like there'll be some missions which will probably be easier to do stealth, some which will be easier to do just run and gun, but there will never be a optimal way of running all missions. It's not Nick Cage, y'all. If it is, I haven't heard Nick Cage. Is CIG planning on adding automated ship defenses? Had a C2 the other day, was out buying Laranite when someone came out and blew it up. Would have been nice to have automated defense, automated response. Sort of. There are ways that you can add what are called blades to turrets, which will be automatic turrets, turn the turrets into automatic defenses. There's also, I think the idea of having PDCs, which is an idea they floated early on, has evolved into bladed turrets. Try again there, Moondog. It's all right. He has John Rhys Davies. He doesn't need Freeman. That's true. Damn it, I died. Now I have to go back for my ship souls. Yeah, not like that. PDC. Point Defense Cannon. CWIZ or LWIZ, I think is what they're called in the US. The Iron Dome in Israel. Effectively automated guns that track missiles and shoot them down before they can hit. Yes, if you keep your engines off and ship on, it'll keep your ship's shields on, but that won't protect it forever. But it's not called CWIZ on there's a land version. It's not called the CWIZ. It's called something similar. CRAM. Yeah, CRAM. Thank you. CWIZ? Cheese whiz? Yes. And put your capacitors to shields after landing. Mm-hmm. Iron Dome's not automatic. 100% automatic. I get it. Just wanted to say thanks, Paul, for your thoughts and answers and opinions. Love the lore post. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Ashman. Thank you for the $10. I am planning on doing a lore thing tomorrow and maybe releasing it on Saturday. We'll see if I have enough time to. I'm starting a new series that I'm calling System Survey, because it's been something that someone's asked for a long time. People have been asking for a long time, which is going through each of the systems, kind of like they did with the Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy, and talking about them in lore. And I'm going to be doing deeper dives than most of the times they've done it. But I'd still expect it to be about like 15 minutes maximum. Nothing too crazy. If you've seen the Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy, it'll be mostly the same kind of concept. But people have wanted me to do it, so I'll do it. And I think when I thought about the name, I said System Survey. That's perfect. Reposting with format. Would you consider Star Citizen, especially the Stanton system, more of a critique of capitalism and imperialism, or a celebration of them? A little bit of both, Rummy. I know the writers are pretty socialist. in terms of their own personal beliefs. They're fairly left wing, but I also know that they do their best to not have their own personal feelings imprint onto the game. The goal of Star Citizen is not to preach to you a story. It's to give you a realistic kind of system that, you know, that's often based on current day, maybe a little exaggerated, but often based off of current day or historical examples, and letting the players find their own path and explore that. So I would say that Star Citizen's story is not supposed to be an idealistic utopia. The UEE is not a idealistic government. It's not meant to be an idealistic government. It's meant to be a realistic government based off of a more pessimistic view of humanity. It's not Star Trek, but it's not like Warhammer 40K. You know, it's not the Imperium of Man. It's a little between the two. It's if you took elements of Star Trek and blended them with Blade Runner, humanity is getting better at what they did than what they were, but they're still fucking awful. Because there's definitely nothing in, like, Hurston is not glorification. It's trash. It's like people are wearing bags on their heads. It's not supposed to be glorious. It's just harder to kind of suss out the lore for that. And when you see things like, when we start to get things like Nyx and we start getting more NPC interactions, you'll start to see that a little bit more. I've often called Star Citizen grim punk because it's a hybrid of grim dark and punk, like cyberpunk. And I think, if anything, if I was going to take any kind of narrative away from the Stanton system right now, I would say that it has the absolute best parts of ultra-capitalism and the absolute worst parts of ultra-capitalism, with places like Hurston being the absolute lowest of the low, the worst aspects of capitalism and imperialism combined, with places like Orison and Microtech being kind of the best aspects of capitalism, where, you know, efficiency and technological development and like how companies can be moral if they wanted to. And the question that CIG and Star Citizen is posing to you is not, they're not beating you with a narrative. They're more saying, here are the things that these things can be the same. They can be both true at the same time. And it's up to you to determine whether you like it or not and how to adapt to it. That makes sense. Oh yeah, no. I mean, even Crusader has the big brother, we're all in this together, like, you know, we're a family. The family of Orison. You know, that kind of thing. They always have that, but I'd imagine you'd have that in most places that would even have like more left-leaning bent in game. Like Nyx is communist. Like I would say Nyx is probably the closest to being an anarchist, you know, typical anarchist society, or the way most anarchists would see society. And to a degree, it's a bit of a joke because one of the main mission givers is the dude who's like, "Hey, welcome, man. I am high as fuck right now. Let's land your ship." You know, Elson, I think is his name. It's a playground for the sci-fi mind. And I think that's the important part to understand about Star Citizen lore, is that it's trying to build a universe for players to enjoy and engage in, but also to make it believable. And they do a really good job of walking that line, because if you look at the people who know the lore and you look at the election that happened 2 or 3 years ago, the amount of people, there was a huge split amongst most people. I would say probably about half the community had one of the various minor candidates that they wanted to support. Some of them were more, traditional conservative, or even like fascistic in their beliefs, and some of them were a lot more liberal or on the left-leaning edge. I don't think they had any straight-up socialists, but in those like kind of what we consider modern-day socialism, in that aspect. But there was a nice big spread in the candidates, and you see people who supported those people. Sometimes they did it for memes, for fun, but you could tell that like there was enough of their own sensibilities. Like, I supported Nago, Go, because she represents, in my mind, a lot of what I would see that I'd like personally, as well as my character, which is progress, but using the system to help create progress rather than just bashing it with a hammer, like, which reflects on a lot of other people's stuff, which is what Star Citizen lore does so well that it's hard to express to people, because most people look at a lore, they go like, oh, like Warhammer 40K, grim, dark, depressing. Star Trek, utopian, automated luxury space communism. And then you look at like Star Wars, it's good versus evil, it's a morality tale. Like that's what people are used to when you're looking at stories, is something that is being told at you, not with you. And Star Citizen does a good job of creating a complex narrative that is told with the players, not at the players. Hopefully, it's a long expression, so hope you understand a little bit of that. Cheesy gave me fun. Cheesy is great. People are cheesy. People are weird. That's great to embrace that, as long as it's not the only thing you see. You haven't really done deep dive into it, negativity. That's fine. I don't know why you're on my channel, negativity, if you think it's boring, because that's pretty much what I do outside of the other stuff. There's a lot of interesting nuance and aspects to it, but it's not easy to find. You have to read a lot, and I know not a lot of people play video games to read. We'll be able to build up two characters at the same time and have them interact? Probably not. Star Citizen equals Star Wars without space wizards? Not really. Star Wars is a lot more ham-fisted in its storytelling. There's definitely aspects that they share, because Star Citizen also uses Rome as its basis, and same with Star Wars, as I used it. So. Yeah, no, I agree that the lore as implemented in the game right now is not up to snuff. But that's because the lore implemented in the game is basic as shit. Most of the lore is on the website, and there's a lot of background and interesting stuff, which is yet to put into the game. Yeah. Now, a lot of that stuff is going to be going into the game. It's just going to take some time, because a lot of systems need to be put in there before you can have things like mission givers, which will give you a little bit more of the context of the universe. And, of course, Squadron 42. Yeah, Star Wars is really polarizing in black and white with this. Yeah, Star Citizen's a lot more gray. Like, a good example of Star Citizen is the UEE. The UEE is the worst. It's not the good guys. They're not evil, but they're not good. They will go out of their way to fuck over people for the right money. They're a terrible government. They're corrupt. They're insular. They give zero shits about the average person. Most people live in absolute poverty under the UEE. But it's better to have the UEE and not get destroyed by the Vanduul or the Xi'an. It's that kind of, like, yes, does life suck? Yes. Could it be better? Yes. But they're also the only shield against me getting destroyed. And on the flip side, there are elements of the UEE which are actively trying to improve life for the average person.
Weapons free, y'all.
Increase decrease crime rates, give people more rights, build up the infrastructure, advance technologically, and absorb other alien species into the empire and make them, citizens and bring them up to par with humanity. There's lots of ideas in the UEE which are good, and the UEE is a lot better than it used to be, but it's still pretty fucking corrupt. It sounds more like Warhammer 40k. The difference between, say, 40k and Star Citizen is with 40k, like, you may live on a planet and never have to deal with the Imperium, or you might get drafted into the Guard and go fight space gods. But you don't really have a lot of freedom in 40k. Star Citizen, the UE, you have freedom. You have the freedom to do what you want. You're not free from consequences, but there's no one telling you, you know, worship the Emperor or do these things. It's more like, these are the laws, don't break them. The UEE doesn't actively seek to repress its citizenry. It just doesn't give a fuck about its citizenry. Like, that's the difference. It doesn't try to control. It just doesn't try to help. Listen, I love me. I love me some mushrooms, all right? At least UE has have guns, yeah. So the thing about the UEE is that it's decentralized. It has a lot of centralized power, but it decentralized a lot of its power at the end of the measures. So most planets are independent, and most of the planets are independently decide their own laws, and the UEE barely gets involved. But as a result, like, things that were built under the measures, you know, hundreds of years before, or things that were built when, you know, planets were first being settled and like state of the art, like stations and such, need to get updated, and they won't, because the UE doesn't have the money to do it, because they don't have the control that they need. That's why I call Star Citizen's lore very grimdark, because it has elements of grimdark. Like, the universe is fucked. Most people in the UEE live in poverty, and if you live outside of the UEE, you live in poverty and in danger. But it's not like depressing. You're not going to die. It's not like you're going to get destroyed by giant space bugs or sentient mushrooms or robots from, you know, whatever. That's not going. You're not going to be turned into a sofa in the Star Citizen universe. It's just that life sucks ass for most people, and it's really difficult or very lucky to pull yourself out of it. And one of the only ways you can pull yourself out of it is join the military. And it gets you citizenship. It gets you a lot of paths to get you out and away from, you know, get you money. It gets you things to get you out of where you were. But it's dangerous as fuck. When it comes to lore in the game, my hope is that the game in 10 years is that we'll be able to actively fight the Vanduul for system ownership. I don't see the point of a point in Idris Jav being flyable without that. 100%, it's going to happen there. Thank you for the $10 negativity. I don't know 4 people with no problems. Haha, that's a good one. Last of Vibot could said they promised it could seats 4 people with no problems. I don't know 4 people with no problems. Oh, it's gonna probably be very tough. Is there a parallel to Caesar's generals who split the empire? Not really. The way it starts, like, Star Citizen is loosely based on the Roman Empire, but I mean, loosely is the key. Ivor Mezer is both Julius and Augustus Caesar, kind of rolled into one. There really wasn't like a second triumvirate or anything else like that. It just kind of roll into the Caesars being a thing and they're around. And we're kind of in a branching point in history, like. The UEE is Rome up until Caligula. And Caligula was Linton. And Caligula is dead. And the Republic has been restored. But the Republic was shit before the Emperors took over, so it's not exactly better. There are no Vandal homeworlds, Ken. That's the sad part. Astropub, could I at least have my YouTube answers? I don't see your YouTube stuff. I go into these rants, I don't see it. What did you say? It boils down to lack of resources and infrastructure. Yes. UE equals more Federation alliance than Klingon dictatorship. Yeah. Yeah, someone who works in product design, I don't buy it. The same effort can get a random non-functioning bar designed could be spent on gameplay loops using already existing assets. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Ask it again, Moondog, if you have it. I don't see your question. I see you mentioning about that's Moontree. Oh, why do you think they constantly choose to prioritize unnecessary additions over core gameplay additions? I'd assume they want more subscribers, purchasers. A smaller yet functional game is best. They're making 2 games. And you're assuming a lot. If you've really worked in design, then you understand that no 2 games are no 2 products are alike. And no 2 companies are alike. And you got to take with what you can with how you can, especially since they're developing it live, which is not what most developers do, nor what they're used to. So the reason why they produced a coffee bar instead of something else has more to do with the fact that they have the tech there. There's also a bunch of back-end stuff which needs to be implemented, which they could implement, but then they would often have to go back and completely change it because tech debt. After the prospector gives off its cargo to a hauler or expanse, how does the prospector continue to mine without those containers? Because it's not like I don't think you're going to see the saddlebags be removed and disappear. The saddlebags will just be dumped into a receiver and then reattach. When will we see furries in game? I have many brothers to avenge. All hail the Flash kits. Funny you say that, Ash. Because Tavarin are a thing. Game is not intended to be as punishing as Eve. No. How might succession of planets or systems work on game release? What do you mean by that, MC? A lot of the gameplay they want to add is pointless to add without server meshing at this point. Yeah, because it's also anything they add, they'd have to go back and hook it into the server meshing, and that would require them to go back, double back, and work on that after the fact, which can often add more work than just leave old systems in place, placeholder systems, and wait for the new tech to come online. Did this new PHU patch drop? I mean, it dropped last night. Didn't they say the coffee shop was one person, like they hired a new person hired? Yeah, it's literally the first thing they did. It was tech that they already had, and they decided to as a test for them when they first got added on to like give them something. Remember the Javelin wreck that was that they showed off like months ago, where they took the Javelin wreck on Daymar and turned it into like a landing zone. That was the Montreal team working on, that was their intro project. CIG seems to hand small, tiny projects to their new employees after they get up to speed and just say, build this and come back when you're done. And if it's really good, they add it to the game. So obviously the one person who worked on the coffee bar was their job was to iterate on the bartender. They made a coffee, like a barista with a little coffee tender, and bingo bango, they're done. Got added to the game. The prospector bags are removable, but the prospector has a backup. Ooh, there's a bunch of people going through. Has backup bags. When the next set is removed, the next set comes down. This is according to the page that devs have said the idea will be. Huh, I don't know about that. Thanks, Dust. That's not something I don't spend a lot of that, so. Hey, lore guy, are the Tavaran extinct? No. Tavaran have been around, still around. There's actually 2 large things of Tavaran. I'm actually going to do a lore bit on them because there's a new Tavaran lore that was announced last week or 2 weeks ago that I have to go through, which talks about kind of the attitudes of the UEE for the Tavaran now. There are 2 Tavaran societies developing. One's in this remote planet that's just outside of the UEE's control, and the other one is on the Tavaran's old homeland, homeworld of now Elysium. So, oh, God damn it. Boom. Got it. Yes, there is a Tavaran senator from the Tavaran homeland. The Tavaran homeworld. Yeah, I'd call PTU wave 0.5, but I'm glad they did it. Hey, Paul, I ask you a law question. Tried looking for answers, but you might know something I've missed. What's up, Archisus? If furries become a thing, I sense a holy war coming. So the Tavaran are effectively bird people. Let me pull up the Tavaran for y'all. These are Tavaran heads, and this is a Tavaran warrior. They're burbs. For those of you who play 40K, they remind me a lot of Kroot. But with, like, more feathers. Do you think we'll ever see a Xi'an Corvette? Probably. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, though. The positive take is the coffee vendor is not incompetent nor not and incomplete, is incomplete, not broken. Oh, nice. Okay. Do other species possess antimatter weapons? Yes. And if so, what is its in place and prevalent to prevent a planet-busting first strike? It's known that the Xi'an Empire and the Vandul know the technology, but have they weaponized it? Yes. I don't know if the Vandul have, but the Xi'an have. If these alien species do have antimatter weapons, how are they treated? As mutually assured destruction, preventing their use, or is there a treaty to limit their use, collectively reduce arsenals of said weapons? Antimatter weapons are actually pretty minor compared to what the kind of weapons. I mean, they're pretty major, but they're pretty... Planets are too important to use them. There's not enough space for most of the species. In fact, most of the conflicts about in this universe is over land and over usable planets, because you can't terraform all the planets that you come across. And even if you could, it's too expensive in many cases. So there's a lot of conflict over who can get what land. So when you use antimatter weapons, it's like a scorched earth thing. Like, ain't no one fucking using that land after you use it. The UEE, as far as I know, has only used antimatter weapons once, and it was against the Vandul after they had completely lost Tiber. They've bombed the shit out of that planet with antimatter weaponry. But it's so the effectively, it's not really a mad situation. It's more of a it's pointless. They're weapons of last resort. They're only used as area of denial weapons rather than first strike weapons, because it takes so long to get from point A to point B that by the time a fleet with antimatter weaponry has been launched, there will be an opposing fleet that will be able to counter them because of the distances. There's no, like, as far as I know, there's no planet that butts into a wormhole or into jump points. Any news on strippers and disco balls for my Caterpillar Strip Club? Nothing yet, Skink. Stinks. Sorry about that. Yeah, the game's going to be rated T for teen is what their goal is. Now, they won't pull punches if something would make it more mature. They're not going to intentionally make it, like, less mature. So be it. But they're not going to have, like, tons of strippers and that kind of stuff. So. How do you think the contact with Kurthox will go for humans? Badly. Hey, Kurthok, any word on the Kurthok? They're the true rulers of the scattered clans of the Vanduul. Supposedly fully organic tech that the Vanduul mimic with their construction style? Possibly. My theory is that the Kurthok are more likely AI, because there's a theme under, like, kind of in the undercurrent of Star Citizen, which is like AI is bad. So with that theme, I would assume that the Kurthok are actually AI servants that the Xi'an built, became sentient and revolted against the Xi'an. And I also have a feeling that they're much more defensive than they are offensive. Because the time we've seen the Xi'an and the Kurthok fight, the Kurthok have moved with inhuman preciseness, assassinating the entire royal family of the Xi'an Empire, like instantaneously all over their empire, which would require some incredible coordination. And on top of that, the wars that the Xi'an and the Kurthok fight are called the Spirit Wars. And I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful like a war you'd fight between soulless machines and souled people fighting with spirits. Still think Salvage will make it 318? Nope. Antimatter bomb philosophy. I don't have it, neither do you. Yeah. But no one's ever going to have it again if you drop an antimatter bomb on it. They Lord people at CIG say that AI projects have always ended in big failure, though. If the Kurthok are AI, they'd have to be the bad guys, essentially. Yes. That's effectively why the Xi'an do not want the humans to talk to the Kurthok, because they know that shit would go bad. Which MISC would you assume is further in development? Odyssey or the Expanse? Expanse. It's smaller. I think we've got to get it, Steven, because money mid-year sale. I think they're more likely to delay Salvage another quarter, but keep persistent hangars and the cargo refactor. I think those two will probably make it, with Salvage not quite getting there. They might get to the point where, like, they're only a couple of weeks away. Like, maybe a couple of teams are almost done with aspects of Salvage, like removing components from bays or removing weapons. And they'll be like, they'll just put it in 319, you know? Because just have all of it in 319 to be much nicer, you know? But it's hard to say. It's still too early to tell. I still don't think it's going to happen, but Kurthok Hive Mind AI? Possibly. But knowing how the Xi'an's own kind of fucked up past, I wouldn't put it past them. They built a bunch of AI and then, you know, treated them like garbage. I think the Expanse is going to be around the same size as the Mole. What about persistent hangars or HABs for 318? I'm more confident in persistent hangars for 318, though it's hard to tell. It's just there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air. Specifically, there's a lot of stuff that's in the progress tractor, which indicates they're getting the back end stuff done. But the back end stuff is only one part of everything else. But there's also a lot of movement, like 3.817 has physicalized components where you can take components and put them into inventory of ships and then transport them if you wanted to, which is it's an intermediary step between fully physicalized components, which you can put then into cargo bays. But once you have, say, the cargo refactor, I don't think it's too far away from having fully physicalized components, which you can pick up and move along with the cargo refactor. Which is why I don't think salvage, would be too far away that we get the ability to remove components of salvage, to remove components from their bays to sell them or remove shit like weapons and such. The mole is $315, y'all. It's going to be about like that. Yeah. I don't think the Krthok are going to assimilate people. The Krthok just want to be left the fuck alone. And the Xi'an see them as like their biggest mistake. That's my theory, at least. Because the Krthok didn't assassinate the entirety of the Xi'an royal family, and then correspond that with an attack on the Xi'an Empire. The Xi'an Empire went into complete and utter chaos for like 60 years after that attack happened. But the Krthok didn't really do anything. They just stayed back. They might have reconquered some worlds that the Xi'an had taken from them, but they mostly just didn't fuck with the Xi'an. So it sounds like to me is that the Krthok are not necessarily evil, but hostile and generally isolationist. That would be my guess. Is a new coffee vendor going to lecture me about the college debt from their gender studies degree? Yes. Yes. They're gonna talk about how they got an English degree and they have nothing to do. Go for it. Which I can relate. I have a history degree and I'm a teacher. As much as I would like to see salvage, the cargo refactor is more important to the overall progress of the game. Yes, and it's much more closer to completion. And it has a big part of salvage, because if the cargo refactor includes the ability to pick up and move and place down ship components or weapons into a physics grid, then that means salvage is coming around the corner, baby. '07 just gonna slide into my first Astro stream. Hey, the friendly industry, how you doing? Or the fried industry. We're almost finished up, sadly, because we've been doing this for 2.5 hours. Will the Expanse be as good as the refineries? Probably better, but probably not as high volume. What's the first race you think we'll see in the verse? Xi'an, Bennu, Vanduul. I think after that, probably the Xi'an or the Devarin. I think the Bennu are super late. Yeah, we'll still be going for a little bit longer there, the fried. So, I'm really feeling like 317 is the turning point for more content-heavy patches. Things to keep. God damn it. Got him. Yeah, I'd rather see salvage come with salvageable components than just hole scraping, even if that means having wait a little bit longer. Yeah. Being able to access components takes us that much closer to Reclaimer being in full glory. Yeah. So Krthok are isolationists like Star Trek's Tholians. The question is, are they as deadingly bureaucratic? I don't know. Think there are any value to owning a MISC Expanse if you tend to play solo? Possibly. Probably not as much as you think. Let me turn on my AC a little bit. I'll be right back. It's getting really hot in here. Oh, I've been saying, Demir, I've been saying for a while that I think salvage is getting to be pushed to 318, but I don't think it's going to be beyond that. I think it's gonna It's going to release 318 or push from 318 to 319, but once it gets to 319, it'll be released. It's very hot in here. Lord's getting hot. Whew. Two decks. Yeah, 2 decks. Expanse crew size? I think like 2, probably. 1, maybe 2. Question: do any races use RKKVs, realistic or relativistically kinetic killed vehicles, effectively relativistic kinetic impactors as doomsday weapons? Possibly. There is one race that is a dead race that blew up half of a planet, like exploded a planet, like it's now half of a planet plus particles, called the Hadesians. They are a long dead race, so they may have done something similar. But we need server meshing / actual MMO for that to be a thing. So short term, there's so much value if you have specific people to play with in the long term, maybe. I don't know what's going on. Hey, $20. Thank you so much. Thanks, Paul. Always enjoy the show. Thank you. Thank you for $20. Do you believe the Expanse will be late next year or further along? I think it'll be probably mid next year. It depends on when server meshing comes out. Because I think refining gameplay is going to be the next big thing after server meshing is implemented. Or after multi-crew gameplay. I wouldn't be surprised if people have tried to develop those systems. The problem, Saturn, is that the amount of space and speed that you need to use to have to build up for near relativistic speeds with using the technology that exists in Star Citizen is not as time consuming, because the fastest speeds in lore is about 1/3 the speed of light. And there is no artificial intelligence in Star Citizen. So without AI and without being able to maneuver at those high speeds, the amount of speed and time it would take to develop one of those things, it could probably either be intercepted by something similar or just would probably miss. The amount of money and time, you could build some other stuff. I know what you're talking about, which is basically like take something, speed it up damn near the speed of light, and watch it slam into something, because if it hits something, it'll just rip through it like it wasn't there. Yeah, jump points is the only way you can go between star systems, which are basically wormholes. Naturally forming wormholes. But yeah, I'm iffy on whether or not the Expanse is a good solo ship. Like, it could be, but you're probably going to be dealing with other players or other NPCs with that. Yeah, it's not as fun. It's not as fun where you can launch things at damn near light speed at each other. That's why Star Citizen is trying to do everything they can to reduce beyond the horizon firing gameplay, because, you know, they're doing dogfighting at insane speeds in but even today, we don't really have dogfighters. All right, y'all. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go back and try to put in some timestamps and stuff like that, because I got to get up early tomorrow to go take my car in to get fixed, because I have tomorrow off, but I've got to do work anyways. We'll be back tomorrow night for twitch.tv/theastropub to play some 317 PTU. Maybe it'll be fixed. Maybe it won't. We'll see. Saturday we'll be doing our April Fool's special for Captain's Table. It's going to be a fascinating conversation, but not one you probably want to hear. Well, if you enjoy fun and you think it's funny, yeah, do this. Thank you all for joining us. Like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black. And remember, Ex Historia ad Astra.